Welcome back for Hamlet Act 5. We are at the end. Almost everyone is dead, and Denmark will never be the same. What should we talk about in this scene, in this act? My big question at the end of the play is Horatio an android? Was he an android sent to Earth by an alien civilization in order to observe human beings in their natural environment? Why do I say that? The man shows no emotion throughout the play, and his one moment of emotion, when Hamlet is almost dead, the king is dead, the queen is dead, Laertes is dead, Polonius is dead, Ophelia is dead, everybody dead, except for Oedipus, except for Hamlet at this point. That's when Horatio has his, there's still some poison left in the cup. I too will commit suicide. And even that is like really robotic. So, there's a little bit of a lack of connection between the emotional and the psychological part of Horatio's brain, which is important if you're doing the third writing prompt, for those of you in my class. So I just wanted to start with that. Pondering if Horatio is really an android sent back from the future or something like that. I probably mentioned in one of the videos that Hamlet is a play about questions, right? We open with a question, we end with a metaphorical question, which we'll get to in a second. And right smack dab in the middle of this play is the big question, the to be or not to be speech, right? The biggest question haunting this play. If you could boil down this entire play into one question, I think it would be, well, now what? Right? Every single step of the way, it's like, well, now what? So there's a ghost. Well, now what? I guess we'll go get Hamlet. We get Hamlet. Hamlet sees a ghost. Ghost tells him to get revenge. Well, now what? Oh, I guess I'll get my revenge, right? This whole, well, now what, goes all the way to the end of the play. The end of the play doesn't end with a literal question, it's a metaphorical question of, well, now what, right? The entire royal line is dead. The people of Denmark don't seem to know how monarchy works, so there won't be like, that can't work. Fortinbras is like, well, I have a claim on Denmark, I guess I'm the next in line, question mark. The ambassador from England is like, oh, maybe? To which Horatio is like, well, let's get some smart people together and we can figure this out. So the question at the end of the play is, well, now what? So here's what I want to talk about specifically in Act 5. I want to cover some of the motifs of the play because we haven't really talked about them. Ultimately, when we're talking about characterization in a play, it's one thing to look at a character's development over the course of the text, to really get those three types of profile about a character. So the physical profile, the emotional profile, the psychological profile. But eventually we want to get to the point of being able to analyze how the author's choices regarding a character affect the motifs and themes of a play, or of a text, right? So we think about the choices that the author, in this case the playwright, makes throughout regarding the characters of Hamlet, Ophelia, and Horatio, and how they affect our interpretation of one of the themes of the play. And of course you can't develop a theme until you focus on one of the motifs and look how the motifs develop over the course of the play as well. So the first motif I want to cover, I actually talked about in the previous video, is the idea of truth versus lies, right? I said in the previous video that it's so many people lie in this play, it's impossible to separate truth from lies. When a character is being sincere, we always have to question it. Is there an ulterior motive underneath the surface? And that comes out especially as a problem, in regards to Hamlet's declaration of love for Ophelia in Act 5, Scene 1, when he jumps into the grave as Laertes is clutching his dead sister, Hamlet declared, well, I loved her 400 times or 4,000 times more than you did. And it presents a problem in that if this is the truth, why did you treat her as absolute garbage every interaction you had with her? None of your interactions with Ophelia in Act 3 would you characterize as love. And even if you are, and we talked a little bit about this last time, even if you are putting on your antic disposition for Ophelia, so Ophelia doesn't leak that you are actually okay because you only trust Horatio, why do you got to be so mean about it, right? There are other crazy things he could have done to Ophelia that's not telling her that everybody's going to think she's a cheating whore and make her believe that all she's good for is creating terrible children who will be monsters, right? So he is absolutely dreadful to her. And then he, in this grand show, jumps in the grave and declares his love for her. Is that really about Ophelia, or is this about Hamlet needing the spotlight? Laertes is a better person than me in almost every capacity. Let me show the world that I am better than him, at least in this one respect. It's impossible to tell. So if we think about the motif of truth and lies through the development of Hamlet, the theme has to be something along the lines of, what would I say? Hamlet tells the truth only in his mind and to Horatio, but he lies to everyone else, and at some point it's impossible to tell what is truth and what is lie. It makes the end of the play difficult to determine. So, lying I guess the theme would be lies. A liar is going to have a difficult time revealing the truth. Maybe that's the problem, is that Hamlet has no way to reveal the truth of what happened to his father, because by the time he has figured it all out, everybody is convinced that he's crazy. Whereas if he did like some sort of investigation and figured this out like a normal person, perhaps he would be able to convince people that, hey, I figured out that Claudius killed my dad, we need to get rid of him. So that's probably what I would say regarding him. Let's look at the motif of reality versus fiction. This is another one, right? And I'm not talking just about like the ghost. Although that is a part of reality versus fiction, right? The big question in Act 3, Scene 4, why can Hamlet only see the ghost, but Gertrude cannot? Because again, like truth and lies, reality and fiction, at some point in Act 3, because they become meshed, and it's impossible to tell one from the other. If Hamlet really saw the ghost in Act 3, why doesn't he see it again throughout the play, at the end of the play? Why doesn't the ghost come back? Why is the ghost only there when he is really angry with his mother? Is the ghost afraid that Hamlet is going to kill his mother, or is the ghost his conscience? Now we should all agree that there is in fact a ghost, because Horatio sees it. Horatio would be the Greek chorus in this play. He is the person that we're like, okay, what does Horatio think? And Horatio tells us, no, there's a ghost. I didn't believe it, but there was. So reality versus fiction, right? Horatio is really the best representation of that because he is the most skeptical. He's a man of deep faith, and we've shown that throughout the play. But he is also the most skeptical of anything that is not believable. So the whole business with the ghost, right? He's so calm, he's so cool-headed, he's so straight-laced that he should be who we look to when we're trying to figure out who's telling the truth and what is reality and what isn't. Unfortunately, we don't get a lot of him in the play, and most of the time he's just going along with Hamlet. So reality versus fiction, Hamlet's insanity. At what point does it stop being fiction and stop being the reality and start being the reality? We can't really tell in Act 4 because he's not in there enough. But maybe there are hints in his game of hide and go Polonius in the beginning of Act 4 where he keeps hiding the body and not telling anyone, that perhaps this is the beginning of a fissure in the lines between reality and fiction for Hamlet. But then the entire Alas, Poor Yorick is a total break of reality, right? He's looking at this skull, at what used to be, and talks about how it's terrible that this clown, the gravedigger, is able to just knock around this great man's skull. And it's pretty clear that he cannot separate reality from fiction at that point. In scene 2, at the sword fight, he tells Horatio that he knows something isn't right. And Horatio, being the one who can separate reality and fiction, says, then don't do it. If you think something is wrong, don't do it. And Hamlet's like, nah, I'll be fine. Because what is real and what isn't real is so convoluted in him now that he can't really be sure. This entire thing is an obvious setup, right? Even if we didn't hear the master plan from the end of Act 4, we should know that Laertes claiming that he could best Hamlet in a duel is not like this show just a want of sportsmanship. They just fought in Laertes' sister's grave. Laertes just choked Hamlet out in Ophelia's grave. All of a sudden he's going to be, hey, you want to spar sometime? And, imagine somebody who, like, you weren't friends with, you get into, like, this terrible, embarrassing fight, and the next day he calls you up and is like, hey, do you want to go shadow box out in an alley? You got to know something's up. This isn't just, oh, well, everything is good now. So the separating reality from fiction in Hamlet's mind has broken somewhere, and it becomes really evident in Act 5. And it's so if we're going to come up with a theme in terms of reality versus fiction, when the line between reality and fiction is broken is when the most damage occurs, right? Because he can't see this, he angers Laertes even more. Laertes was having second thoughts about doing this. We even get a little bit of that right before the fight. If Hamlet just says, nope, this isn't right, I know it's not right, we don't have the bloodbath at the end of the end of the play. Last one, action versus inaction. This is a play of inaction. And the only times Hamlet acts on his revenge, people die. And it's usually never the right person. So he kills Polonius because he finally acts. Laertes gets stabbed because he's angry and wants revenge, right? His mother dies. He's going to die. And of course, Claudius is going to die, but he only does that after he finds out that he has been poisoned and that Gertrude has been poisoned. And so Hamlet's anger is the only motivation to action in a play with 7 soliloquies. This is supposed to be a play about the psychological build of this character, but the only action is based off of base anger. So what is the play saying about that? Hamlet is a very smart person. He has great insight. But he is so driven by revenge and anger that it conflicts with his more sophisticated psychological mind. So the action versus inaction could be boiled down further to, rational brain versus lizard brain. Lizard brain telling us to just act, right? Fight or flight syndrome. Whereas our rational, developed brain is telling us, no, think first, rationalize what is really happening here. And that idea is played with throughout this play as well. That idea of, Hamlet talks about it in his soliloquy in Act 4, right? The animal versus the man. He talks about it when he talks about the worms feeding poor people the guts of rich people. He talks about it way back in Act 1 when he's upset that the Danes get drunk and make fools of themselves because it's unsophisticated. So there's somewhere in there, if you really dug deep, there's this, it's not royal versus common, but acting royal versus acting common, and kind of this development of sophistication is the word I'm looking for, right? Sophisticated versus unsophisticated. And so action versus inaction, action is linked to unsophistication. Hamlet acts when he is emotional and hot. Inaction is part of sophistication. And it's when you confuse inaction and sophistication with weakness, which is what Hamlet does. He can't quite escape this old school philosophy of men react, men get revenge, men do this, men. He can't get past that, so he can't embrace that romantic, that smart, that inactive side that Ophelia loves so much. And that leads to all of the chaos in the play. So those are three motifs. If you're talking about a motif in terms of a character, you have to look at how that character reflects that motif, and that will give you the theme in terms of that character. We did that with Truth and Lies. We did that with Reality and Fiction. Hamlet, in terms of action and inaction, would be something to the effect of being able to control your emotions. It's a better way to resolve problems. This is bad because I'm coming up with it off the top of my head, but that's essentially what I mean. It's if you let your emotions get the better of you, yes, you may act like a man, or quote unquote a man, but there are some pretty dire consequences to that. Now, if you're doing that third prompt, then you got to think about each of these in terms of Horatio. Horatio, truth and lies. Truth is always the answer. Always be truth. Never tell a lie. Reality versus fiction. Reality is only reality when you see it. Action versus inaction. Horatio only acts when he is sure, and he is the lone survivor of all these people. You take the top 6, 7 characters, and he is the lone survivor. Why? He is the one character not driven by passion or anger or his emotions. He is in control of all of that. Laertes, Ophelia, Gertrude, all of these people are working off of emotion. Horatio does not. I joked at the beginning that he's an android, but he is also the one who survives. And Hamlet won't let him give over his emotions. Horatio is, I believe, going to drink that poison, and Hamlet knocks the cup out of his hand. No, dude, come on, what are you doing? You are not this person. So there's something to be said for that. The android part of Horatio is what drives him to be the lone survivor, right? His willingness to be inactive until he is sure that the action is correct. He is sure of reality. He has to see things in order to believe it. There's some irony in the Christianity of that. And then truth versus lies. He only tells the truth. He is only capable of truth. He is the one who survives. Everybody else violates those three things. They are all dead. All right. So that's Act 5. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe. If I had a Patreon page, I would lead you to that, but I don't. We'll see you guys. Bye.